This is controversial because why do you add like a new page to the flow? Man, a lot of people really push back. I was like, no, 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 we're solving the customer problem here. And when we tested it, it's still one of the biggest wins I've ever had. Product friction is okay. What matters most is improving mental friction.
Welcome to the Product Discovery Show, a show about product discovery done right. We talk to tech leaders about the real products they shipped, where user insights made a difference. We'll dive into their case studies from end to end and share the insights that transform the trajectory of the products. I started this show to help product managers and entrepreneurs do better discovery. Too many times, products fail because we targeted the wrong problem or the wrong solution. We need more products to be successful. Our guest today is Maria Cuasay, Director of Product at Ancestry. Maria oversees growth and onboarding at Ancestry, where she structured her team to have incredible experiment velocity. They run almost one experiment every day and can get learnings very quickly. Maria started her journey in venture capital, then led product and growth at Lyft and at healthcare startups like Elemi and Opencare. If I were to describe Maria in 3 words, I would describe her as impact-driven, systems thinker, and creative. Maria is a strong believer in complementing quantitative and qualitative data, and I'm excited to talk to her about how product discovery drove visible impact for the products she shipped. Welcome to the show, Maria. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
So, Maria, you and I have known each other for almost a decade, I believe, and I'm actually always curious about asking you this question, which is, if someone were to ask you about the type of product leader that you are, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, that really has been an evolution. I think like if you talk to me even just like more than 2 years ago, a lot of people would just call me like very strategic, very analytical, which I think I still am.
You
But
are.
I think the number one is now it has really evolved into like being self-aware. I tell people that my job, not only as a product leader, but just like a leader period, is to just be 90% self-aware. And when I can do that, I know how to react to situations. I get to have a sense of like how people are feeling, what people are like sort of thinking, and just making sure that there's always positive energy into the team. I think that is super, super critical, is everyone enjoying what they do, feeling that they're making an impact, and always like collaborating with each other. And everything always starts with you. If you're not feeling good, people sense that really quickly, and the team just won't have that positive energy.
I love that. And I could tell that culture really matters to you. And the way that you can create a positive culture in a product team is to know where you stand, what the team needs, and how best to really motivate the team, right? Build that culture that is cohesive, inclusive, and motivated. So I'm actually curious, in terms of your journey so far in product, incredible journey, right? I look at your journey that we've shared together at Opencare, and then from there, incredible journey. And so I'm curious, where were the places that you would say were where you most defined you as a product leader? So where were the most defining places for you as a product person and a product leader?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky that I've been able to go back and forth between a startup and a large company. I think there's so much benefit to seeing both sides of the coin, right? And I started off as like employee number 9 at Opencare, where you and I met. And it was like purely a startup where we just had like one table at a co-working space, right? That first was very defining to me because that's really where I learned product. We were so lucky that we were just surrounded by extremely intelligent people, some of the best people I've worked with even to this day. And I really learned a lot from them, right? Like, I still remember that time when one of our colleagues was saying, actually like observed me hearing the word conversion rate for the first time. And she could see like my eyes were like trying to think about what that is. But at Opencare, that is where I learned all the fundamentals. I think that's the most thing that you get to learn at a small company. So you'll learn the first principles of everything, right? Because you have to do everything. Like, even though I was a growth manager at that time, I was really, I was the analyst. I was also the user researcher. I was the product manager. I was the growth marketing manager. And, I was just like doing everything. And when you're doing everything, you really have to like question and like think about everything in first principles. Like, why am I doing this? How would I do it differently? And you just like consume as much information on how to do that really well. So I would say that is the most foundational thing that has led me to my product career, and that I'm super grateful for. And so that's number one. Second would be Lyft, going from Opencare to Lyft, from like employee number 9 to like employee number 3,000 or something like that. And it was definitely a shock to the system where you have to be very polished. And at a startup, you learn so much, but you're not that polished. You're not quite polished. And like the political aspect of how to be really impactful in such a large company, right? And I was able to do all the strategic things that I learned at Opencare, but I think what I learned the most at Lyft is how to be very effective in working with many people. I think it sounds simple, but my gosh, that is probably the most difficult thing that I've had to learn. Like learning about strategy, learning about product execution, that is like nothing. But when you're dealing with not only just like one individual, but like multiple individuals, it is so much more complicated. Right. And yeah, so that's where I really got to learn about how to do that. It all also, again, goes back to self-awareness. It goes back to you as a person. I think that was the beginning, very early beginning of my journey as a product leader, is like, okay, I really need to be self-aware, because it's not just about me anymore. It's not just about my impact, but about how are you also impacting the people around you. And the last place that have really made an impact on me is obviously here at Ancestry. I'm a very reflective person, and over the years, I've always thought about, if I could have my own growth team, this is what I would want it to look like. And at Ancestry, me and my design partner and engineering partner, the three of us started the growth team at Ancestry, and I really got the chance to like build that vision of what a growth team is like, and it was really fun. And I realized, my vision isn't perfect, and so you have to tinker it, but it was really defining in my career because I got to really exercise that vision of mine.
Love it. I talk to people who have had similar trajectories where they kind of flip-flop between startup and larger tech and back to startup. Where do you lean? Where are you more into the startup where you can really execute fast and get results? Are you more into the, larger tech where you can see larger scale impact? Where do you lean?
Look, I love to build. I really, really, really love to build. That is the most important thing to me. So there are two paths that I could continue to go. Number one could be at like a Series C, Series D company where you have the product market fit, and now you just need to do like hockey stick growth. Or at a large company, there are times when you want to try something new. That's also a place that I would love to do. But basically, my fundamental is like, I just want to build. I think I've learned how to work with politics in the office and like get through bureaucracy and whatnot, but I just prefer to like build things from the ground up.
So even at a bigger company, would you say your leaning is more towards 0 to 1 products?
Yeah, 0 to 1, or maybe like a small product that have found their product market fit and can now like really grow.
But awesome. And so Maria, I would love to dive into some examples where product discovery and user insights really made a difference in your product work. And user insights were, it really changed the trajectory of the product. So I would love to start with Ancestry because it's the most recent example. And I know it's being worked into a HBS, Harvard Business School case study. Is that right?
That's correct.
Awesome. So for the listeners who might not know about Ancestry, can you tell us a little bit about the company for those who are unfamiliar?
Yeah. So I know most of your listeners probably know what Ancestry is. We have like 94% brand awareness, which is same as like Disney and Nike. So people know what it is, but they don't know what exactly we do. If you get them to guess, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're the DNA company. But actually, we do so much more than that. DNA is a smaller part of our business. The bigger part of our business is actually called family history. So, and it's so cool. It's a really cool product. So imagine if you could trace who your ancestors were like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Some people can go all the way back to the So from you all the way to the 1400s, you can find your ancestors on Ancestry and even like see what their lives were like at that time because we have like so many records. So that's actually a bigger part of our business. That's what Ancestry does in addition to DNA.
It's incredible. The fact that records is the bigger part of the business and how you can really trace back to the stories and the lineage of ancestors. I love that aspect of it. And so we'll talk a little bit about the feature or the product that you were launching. So tell us more about that product.
Yeah, it's not so much of a product, but more of an optimization. And this was when I joined Ancestry. So as what I mentioned earlier, I joined Ancestry to really start the growth team. There were only three of us. They hired me as a product person, and then they hired two other people, a design partner and an engineering partner, to start the growth team. Our CEO is Deb Liu, and she came from Facebook, where the concept of growth really started, right? And when she joined Ancestry, she's like, oh, we should really have a growth team. And so I joined to do just that. And, you know, when I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to this, when you join a new company or even a new team, you want to show your impact right away. You know, you don't want to be slow in your impact. You really need to be very strategic in your biggest bet and like what you're focused on. And for us, it was actually the checkout flow. So when users come to the website, they look at the site, they try to understand what exactly Ancestry does. And if they are interested, they go to the checkout flow, they look at the offer page, like pick a free trial, and then they go to create an account, and then they put their credit card, and then they start a free trial or even become immediately a paying customer, right? So that was the first thing that we actually focused on. And the only reason why is because if you're growth, you have to show business impact. And any changes that you make on the checkout flow immediately becomes revenue.
Yes.
Right. And so there's no faster way for us to have shown impact than working on the checkout flow. So that was the that's the place where we focused on first.
Very, very interesting. Exactly like you said, right? Any kind of optimizations that you can make to growth, to that end-to-end user journey, will directly translate into business revenue. So it sounded like when you first joined the team and started the growth team, that's where you focused your attention. So what were some of the things that you were seeing in the user experience before you started experimenting? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I mean, product discovery, it's always quant and qual. I mean, I guess this is what your podcast is about, right? Like how important qual is. I've noticed so many times in a lot of companies that people really highly depend on just like quant data. Like I understand it's so easy to get quant data and easier to analyze it than qual, but qual was really the biggest reason that have made an impact here. So let me explain. The first part of the discovery process, I look at the quant data. Quant data is not complicated, right? You have three pages that I was looking at. You have the offer page where people pick the offer. And then the second page would be create an account. And then third page is add a credit card, right? That is the flow. Super, super simple flow. And what I have seen is that, and the easiest place for me to experiment on is that create account page. And so I was like, okay, what can I do in this create account page? And that's when I started to talk to customers. I was like, hey, go through this flow. What are you seeing? And the number one thing that they were seeing is like, even though they have been to the site and even though they have looked at the offer page, once they click on the offer, they immediately see a create account and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I still don't understand what Ancestry does. Like, why are you asking me to create an account? Like, I just do not understand what I need to do. And it just like turns them off. And so, yeah, so that was really the number one customer problem is like, they still don't understand what they could get out of Ancestry. And so they're not comfortable starting a free trial or paying for a product until they understood that, right? And
Actually,
so, yeah.
you said the create account page. So first of all, you said that that page is where you can have the most impact or where you started. How did you get to that conclusion?
Yeah, the offer page is very sensitive, right? And there are a lot of cross-functional partners involved. So marketing team actually owns that, but also finance is is very much involved in that. Any tweaks to the offer page could really change your financials. And when you're just starting off in a company, that's probably not the best place to start, given that you would have to go through a lot of discussions, a lot of more, like influencing. And again, it's all about time. How can you make an impact as fast as possible, right? And so the next best thing would be registration. And registration is, or the create account page. And that is a much simpler page, and you don't have to go through that many processes. So a lot of like strategic decisions that you need to make so that you can make an impact.
Makes sense. And, I'm trying to envision the user journey right now. So how do people actually get into the offer page? Are they seeing ads? Are they hearing from friends, referrals? What's kind of the entry point into the offers page?
Yeah. A lot of people know us through our television ads. And so what usually happens is that people see an ad and then they come to our homepage, like Ancestry.com. A big majority, I think, large majority of our traffic just comes organically on the Ancestry.com page. And then from there, they can go to other places, but usually the next place that they go to is the offer page. Yeah. So it'll be the homepage, offer page, create account page, and then the add credit card page.
Does it usually happen within the same session that they're checking out the offers and then they're like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and try it out? Or are you noticing that people are coming back and trying to decide that the decision-making process is longer before they decide to convert?
The actual journey itself is a long time, but the data that I was looking at was usually more like first-time visitors, like just trying to figure out what they could get on Ancestry at that time.
So that's what you were referring to as confusion, right? This is first-time users coming in, they're poking around the website. They're like, oh, I wonder what kind of offers and promotions I can get to test my DNA or check my records, my historical records and family records. And so they land on the offers page. So what was it that's not educating people about Ancestry on the offers page? What else are they looking for before they're able to decide?
Yeah, the product is not simple. Like the way that I described it, it sounds very simple. It's like if you want to go all the way back to 1400s, you can trace your ancestors. But how do you really explain that to a customer really simply? It's not easy. And so we had to do more user research of like what really resonated with a lot of people. The one that resonated quite a bit is like the records that we have. And so like when we mentioned that, we have birth, marriage, death records, we also have a lot of like World War II records. So if you have veterans in the family, you can see their World War II records. So when we start to list out the records, that's the beginning of the aha moment. It's like, I get to really find out about the stories of my ancestors. And so that was also a critical insight that we experimented on.
Cool. So let's take us back to that moment, right? So you just joined the team. You're starting to see these gaps in both the analytics and also the qualitative user feedback that you're hearing. So what did you end up doing? How did you take that insight into product transformation?
Yeah, exactly. Again, the customer problem is really, really simple. They just don't understand what we do. And then, as what I said, the first thing that resonated was like the types of records. And so the experiment that I tested in the beginning was very simple. So you got the offer page and then you have the create account page, right? On the create account page, all I did was add a banner at the top with a checklist. And the checklist showed what type of records we have. So check 1, we have birth, marriage, and death records. Check 2, we have World War II records. Check 3, we have like, parish records in England, all of that. So we showed like a list of the records that a lot of people would want to have. And so that was my first experiment. I knew in my gut, it's like, the customer problem is really clear. This should perform well. Okay. And so we tested it out, but immediately I was seeing flat results. I'm like, how is this possible? Like everything was flat, maybe even trending a little bit negative, but it just wasn't performing the way that I really hoped that it would be. But I was really scratching my head because how is this possible? Like that is exactly what they're looking for. And, I've talked to so many customers. And so we stopped the experiment and then scratched my head a bit more. And then I was like, you know what? I have to go back to users again because like I don't know why this is not performing well. So we talked to some customers and we told them, all right, go through the flow with the experiment, right? What happened is that after they click on the offer page and then they get to the create account page where there's that banner, they actually just immediately scrolled down to the create account form. So they immediately started filling out the form. So what happened is that they didn't see my experiment, my banner at the top of the create account page. They completely missed it, right? And so when I noticed that, it's like, oh, they're not even seeing it in the first place. Like, that's why it's like flat. And so the next iteration was a bit controversial, was to take that banner and turn it into a full page. And so what I wanted to do was insert it in between the offer page and the create account page. So the new experiment now is you have the offer page, you have the full page checklist of the records, and then you have the create account page. Now this is controversial because as what a lot of people have experienced in their product career is like, why do you want to add friction to the flow? Why do you want to add like a new page to the flow? Man, a lot of people really push back. I was like, no, we're solving the customer problem here. But like, I had to talk to a number of people and really convince them, like, if it starts to perform really badly, we can like take it down in like the first 30 minutes, let's just test it. And so I had that mentality. It's like, let's just test it. Let's see how it goes. And then when we tested it, it still is one of the biggest wins I've ever had here at Ancestry. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I had strong conviction that I was solving the right customer problem, right? I've talked to a number of customers, and that was the number one thing that came up again and again. And so my conviction was very strong. It was the execution that was the problem, right? Putting a banner in the first experiment wasn't effective because people didn't even see it. They immediately scrolled down. But
Why is that? Why would they immediately scroll down to create an account?
Yeah, well, there's a couple reasons. So number one, we all know about banner blindness, right? But also number two, I think what I've noticed is that if you have a form, people immediately gravitate to the form and they won't even like think about anything at the top. It's like they immediately gravitate to the form and they start filling it out. And so if you have a form, they're not going to be seeing anything around it.
So, having seen that adding the checklist on the account creation page did flat, right? You added in as a banner, people didn't look at it. You could have made different decisions at that point. You could have said, I'm going to make the checklist even more visible, make it bigger, make it take up more of the page, but have it be on the same page as the account creation side of things. But instead, you decided to take this bold move of adding an extra page. How did you decide on that rather than just making the banner more visible?
Yeah. So when the first experiment failed was, yeah, I could have had like a bunch of hypotheses, right? And this is what a lot of PMs do is like, well, let's hypothesis on why it didn't perform well and then all of that. But that takes time, right? That takes a lot of time. And the issue that I had in this situation was I didn't have time. I had to show impact right away. Like I actually told my boss is like, you need to give me 1 month. So I put like a timeline on myself. Like I had to make an impact right away in 1 month. And so instead of like listing out all the hypotheses, I just went back to interviewing a handful of customers. And then when I heard them or when I observed them and realized this is a visibility problem, well, if you want to make an impact, what is the most extreme way that you can run the experiment? And since the problem is visibility, the most extreme experiment is to take up a full page. To take up a full page. So that's exactly what I did.
That page, was there like a call to action or was it just at the bottom, click next to sign up?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the CTA is, but it's I think it's like just next or something like that, or like start free trial. It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't anything like different.
Got it. And then just out of curiosity, are most people signing up on desktop web or mobile?
Yeah, mostly mobile web. I think about 60% mobile web.
Yeah, that could also have been wise. There's some banner blindness because the real estate is so small and people are just like, let me just get through it and create an account. So that's fascinating. So you said you ran this experiment. It's one of the biggest, highest impact experiments that you've ever seen at Ancestry. Are you able to share some numbers, or what scale are we talking about here?
Unfortunately, I cannot share numbers, but we did set a goal for us, and it was an aggressive goal. I think even my boss, Heather, she was the chief product officer at that time. I was reporting to her. She's like, "Okay, this is a bit of a stretch goal." I was like, "Yeah, it's a stretch goal." Anyway, that experiment exceeded the stretch goal. And so that's why there is even controversy after running the experiment and getting the results, is because like a lot of people were scratching their heads on like, how could this be so big? It's literally just adding one page. Like, how could this be so big? So yeah, there was a lot of head scratching, a lot of like controversy even after that. I think the biggest learning for me here is product friction is okay. Okay. What matters most is improving mental friction. So if I had a penny every time someone tells me, it's like, don't add a new page, or like, oh, this is way too long. There is just so much evidence from a lot of companies, in addition to the experiment that I just shared, that you can make anything as long as you want. You can add as many pages as you want. That is okay, as long as you're improving the mental friction for people. And so what was happening, right, with this customer problem is like they get to the offer page and then they immediately see a create account page. There was so much mental friction. They're like, wait, I don't even know what I'm paying for. Why should I create an account? But when we ease that mental friction of like after offer page, we showed another page that even clarified what they could actually get, then they were just much more likely to convert, right? So that is really the biggest learning of this experiment.
I love that conclusion. The difference between product friction versus mental friction, because it's almost like storytelling, right? If we want to reduce friction as much as possible, we won't have movies. They'll just show the ending, the beginning and ending for every single movie. But
Exactly.
sometimes you need to take people on the journey. You need to take people on that story of here's the beginning, here's, the turning point, here's what we did afterwards, right? And really reducing mental friction is what we're aiming for. So the
Exactly.
worst case scenario is you add product friction and mental friction, then you definitely see conversion flop. But product friction is not the goal if mental friction can be reduced. If we can reduce mental friction, that should be the ultimate goal. So I love that conclusion. So I'm curious. So having this such a high impact experiment, what happened after? What was your team able to test more screens to add in? Were there other problems, customer problems that you tried to solve? Where did you take this learning from there?
Yeah, I think where we really went from here was that we built a stronger and better reputation that we could really make impact as a team. That was the most important. It wasn't so much about, okay, what next, of like, what other experiments can we run next? This experiment was more to build reputation, that there is a really good potential for the growth team to make an impact in the company. And so after this, our remit started to become bigger and bigger. So we didn't just focus on the checkout flow. We expanded to onboarding, which is big for any company. And then now we even expanded to working really closely with marketing and the rest of the product team to think about growth end to end. So yeah, so my team now focuses on generating new customers, like converting all registrants into the website into becoming customers. So we went from something super small to like onboarding, which is relatively large, to now like, all right, Maria, you have the entire site. How can you convert all of these customers? So that was really like the main thing that happened after that, is like building that reputation and like growing that remit over time.
Love it. I love how this example showed, talking to users really changed how the team thought about product and friction. And then you were able to really have impact and influence over time now on the end-to-end growth experience. So I want to switch gears a little bit because I know one of the most creative examples that we have ever chatted about when it comes to talking to users and user insights is during your time at Opencare, where you try something very, very different, very unique, and very immersive. So I would love to give listeners a taste of that. So for people who might not know what Opencare is, let's chat a little bit first about what it is and give people some context.
Yeah, so opencare.com helps you find a dentist in your city. So very simply, let's say you live in San Francisco, you're looking for a dentist, you can go to opencare.com to find one.
Awesome. And what was the product you were working on, or what was the goal, the project you were working on at the time?
Yeah, so I was part of the growth marketing team at this time, not the product growth team, but the growth marketing team. And just like all other companies, we needed to find new customers to generate revenue. And to do that, we were trying to find new growth marketing channels. Again, very similar to problem to basically all tech companies. So we had the basic growth marketing channels. We had Facebook, we had Instagram, we had SEM, we had referrals. So we had a really good list of channels. And so we started to look at like the long tail of other channels out there. And we wanted to try out direct mail, right? But direct mail is not an online channel. And we've never worked on offline channels before. It was our first offline channel. And the problem with offline channel, specifically with direct mail, is that you only have one shot at making this work, right? You need to put up front quite a lot of money and you have no idea whether it's going to work, right? It's different compared to like Facebook, where you can put $100 and see whether your campaign is performing. Direct mail, you can't put $100. I think like the minimum at that time was like $10,000. And for a startup, that's a large amount of money, right? And so we had one shot. You need to put up a lot of money. You don't know it's going to work. And so what we had to do was reduce the risk as much as possible. And so like, how do we know that the direct mail flyer will capture people's attention and get them to convert, right? Like that is the only thing. I think everything else, we were very methodical about it. Like we picked the areas of the city, we picked the buildings in the areas of the city that are what like our customers look like. So we were very confident about that. The part that we just weren't confident about is the flyer that we put in people's mailboxes. Like, is it capturing their attention? Is it getting them to convert? Are they going to keep it? So that was the main issue. And we had to reduce that risk of not performing well.
Oh, that is a lot of risk, right?
Yeah.
One shot to get it right. And it's not like when you're building software, you can just put screens and prototypes in front of people and you just rinse and repeat. This one is like, you just got to get it right the first time. So how did you approach de-risking something like this? How did you make sure that one shot you were able to get it to be successful?
Yeah, so this is probably the most fun user research project I've ever done. It's fun, it's funny, I love it. So anyway, what we did was we wanted to simulate the user experience. So the way that we had to simulate it is like, what do people actually do? So when you think about it, and everyone has experienced this, you go to your mailbox, you open your mailbox, you have a stack of flyers, right? And again, everyone does this where they have a stack of flyers and then they create two piles. One pile is like a flyer that they would keep, a flyer that they would throw away. So they would do that all the time, right? Like I do that, and Jing Jing, I'm pretty sure you do that as well. It's like, okay, what am I going to keep? What am I going to throw away? So we wanted to simulate that experience. And so what we did was we designed our first flyer, and then we recruited a bunch of people to come to our office, all right? And to not bias them, we covered like our company logos in the office and like pretended that it was like a co-working space. so that they wouldn't know that they're at the Opencare office. So when they come to the office, we brought them to a room, and then we gave them a stack of flyers. And then we told them, now create 2 piles. Which flyer would you keep and which flyer would you throw away, right? And so they did that, and then they started to go through the flyers. And the first couple rounds, our flyer, like my flyer, the Opencare flyer, was always in the trash pile. It's like, no, I'm not going to keep this, right? And then, so after they did that exercise, then I would start to ask them, it's like, I took the Opencare flyer. It's like, what did you think about this flyer? Like, why did you put this in the throw pile? And the feedback was threefold. Number one, it's not food. So food flyers perform really well. So that's why if you receive flyers from like HelloFresh or from other food companies like DoorDash, especially back in the day, they perform really well. And like direct mail was one of their biggest channels, was because people like food flyers. So number one, it's not a food flyer. All right. That I couldn't do anything about it. But the 2 other pieces of feedback was really helpful to us. Is like, number one, I don't know what Opencare does. Like, what exactly do you guys do? Because we talk a lot about offers. Like, you know, we'll give you a gift card if you find a dentist on Opencare. But like, what exactly is Opencare? They just don't know what it is. And then the second, our initial prototypes of a flyer, the offer was quite small. And so people it didn't grasp their attention. And so those were the 3 pieces of feedback. Again, the last 2 were the ones that I could actually make an impact on. And so we iterated. We made the offer bigger. Actually, we made it like decent size, and then people still weren't seeing it. And then we made it really big. And then finally people will see it. And then we changed like the value prop. And we iterated as we went. So like a user research participant, a user research participant would come in. We get the feedback. We immediately change the flyer before the next person comes. And then the next person comes, and then we do that thing again. We hear the feedback, and then we would iterate. And then we stopped iterating to the point when people started to put the flyer into I'll keep this file.
I'll keep this with all my food flyers. This
I'll
is great.
keep this with my food flyers. And then I'll put it up on my fridge door. And so once we started to see more and more of that, we're like, okay, we got the right flyer, then this should work. And yeah, that was probably the most fun and the best user research project I ever done.
This is so fascinating to hear because my 2 takeaways, right? The first one is you were doing rapid iteration, rapid testing. So as soon as you heard feedback, you start iterating. And I'm guessing pretty much the same day, you would reprint the flyer, and then before the next person comes in, kind of redesign it based on the feedback. Similar,
That's right.
Very similar to, you know, testing on software, right? We can just tweak some of the pixels, change the colors, and make things bigger, make offers bigger, and then test it again, retest. So I love the fact that you did that with the physical flyer and really brought those digital practice into the physical flyer testing space. So that's my first takeaway. And then the second takeaway, which I think actually really ladders up well to the Ancestry example too, is people really, sometimes they don't know our product as well as we think they might know. They don't pay attention to our product as much as we think they should or they might. And it's really hard to uncover that until you talk to a user and you realize, hey, people have thousands of flyers that they're sorting through every single week. And we really need to distill our value proposition and our offer as clearly as possible. So it seems fascinating that both of those myths came up in your examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Jingjing, you work at Uber, but not everyone has really that benefit of like just knowing what Uber does. In most other companies, they just don't know what it is. And it sounds really simple, but it is probably one of the most difficult things to do, is to explain what your company does, what your product does. And you're right, like almost all of the companies I've worked in, except for Lyft, where I had to really explain the value prop of our company.
It's incredible. I think overall, because there are so many things that are grabbing our attention nowadays in the digital space,
Yeah,
people's mind share for any one product decreases over time.
totally.
And so that's where the magic of growth comes in, right? You have to start to get very creative about how best to capture attention, how best to get positioning right, how best to win a portion of people's mind share. So I love it. I think both of these examples that you gave are really good illustrations on why we should talk to users and realize that they don't think about our company or our product as much as we think they do.
Yeah, and the last point on this is copy is incredibly important. I was telling this to another friend where a big difference between growth and core product, like there's a number, but one of them is growth product managers really need to learn how to write copy.
Yes.
I'm lucky enough that I also came from a growth marketing background where I had to write copy, so it became very natural to me over time. But but it sounds simple, and I'm like, why would I write copy? And it doesn't sound like it's product work. It is product work. You have to explain what your product does to a user very succinctly. It's not easy. It is really, really, really not easy.
It's not easy. It's by far one of the hardest skills to acquire. And so if you could give advice to people about how they can become better at writing copy, what advice could you give?
I think my only best advice, and I think like how I learned how to be much more efficient and effective in writing copy was pure experimentation. I was lucky enough that in a lot of my past experiences, I was able to run a lot of experiments really quickly. And I would write copy, I'd put it up, I would like, "Ooh, that's not working." And then I try another one, and then, "Ooh, that sticks." And then after you do that many times, you start to build an intuition of what works and what doesn't work. It's really hard to build that intuition without a lot of experience. And so if you don't have that opportunity to like run as many experiments as possible, then we go back to user research, right? You write copy, you show it to customers, see what resonates. And then once you get a sense of like what's resonating, that's what you put on your website or even your direct mail flyer.
I love the fact that I think the other key that you mentioned is really simulating that experience. Because it's one thing for you to invite users into the office and say, put that one flyer in front of them, be like, okay, tell me how you feel about this flyer. What do you understand? What do you not understand? But that is not a natural simulation of how people are in the real world. And I think this applies to digital products as well. We need to really simulate that, that environment. Are they outside? Are they at home on their couch, sitting with their partner? Right? Like, I think there's a lot of things that we need to do in order to make sure that that environment is replicated and that response is natural and organic as possible. So I love that.
No, 100% Jing Jing. Like, I love that you mentioned that because to me, that's what product is, right? And I tell people this all the time, like, product is actually really, really simple. One, how do people do things offline, manually, in the real world? And all we do is automate or productize that offline experience, right?
Yes.
That's all we're doing. And so you really need to have an understanding of like what that full experience is like really end to end. Like, yeah, sitting with your partner on the couch or what that is, because once you have a good idea of that end to end user experience, that's when you build like really good product. That's when you come up with really good ideas.
Love it. Love it. Such great nuggets and words of wisdom. And Maria, I know that a lot of listeners are people in product and also entrepreneurs. So what advice do you have for product folks and entrepreneurs on how to launch successful products? You've done a lot of both the analytical side and also the qualitative side. So what advice would you have for them to be more successful at launching products?
Yeah, I think, it's really the theme that we've been talking about today, which is like combining quantitative data and qualitative data, right? I don't see this enough. I just do not see this enough. That is product discovery. You really need to combine those two together. And I can be a bit more tactical here. Like, number one, a lot of people in the tech industry are pretty analytical. And so they rely a lot on numbers. Like, it's easy to be in our home office pulling data and then analyzing that. That's super simple, right? And that's very comfortable. You don't need to get out of your comfort zone to do it. But that only tells one side of the story, right? Quant tells what's happening, qual tells why it's happening, right? And then for qual, you do need to push yourself. You do need to talk to customers. It's much easier than you think. People would love to talk to you about their opinions, and so you would have to go through that process. I highly encourage people who have never done it themselves, whether they only rely on like other user research people in the company, to do it themselves, because you really start to build a stronger empathy to the customer. Second, also, you can leverage unmoderated user research, right? So you can put up your product prototype, you can get a bunch of customers, you write the script, and then when participants come on, they just read your script and they tell you what they think without you needing to be there. So you can also do that too. If you want to take it really slow, you can do unmoderated, and then you can do more moderated user research. And then also have fun with user research. It's not supposed to be like such a pain where like, oh, I have to talk to customers. Have a lot of fun. That example at Opencare where we like covered all the logos in the company. We had a blast doing that. I think we were like laughing the entire time. And then simulating that user research experience, it was so, so, so fun. I think like once you get to that point, you not only appreciate user research, but you also just have like so much fun with it. So that's one tactic. And then the other part is number two, one other part where people are like, I just don't know how to analyze qualitative data. I would highly recommend using the opportunity solution tree, because I completely understand that qualitative data, it feels like so all over the place, right? Quantitative, you can go down to the details really easily and pinpoint the problem. Whereas with user interviews, you're just like, sometimes you're just listening and I'm like, I don't know what the root problem is, because people are just like talking and talking and talking. Use the opportunity solution tree to like structure your thinking. And it's a very simple concept, right? At the top of the tree, you have your goal. So let's say your goal is revenue, right? And then the second part is, what are all the input metrics that drive revenue? So you could have like people coming to the website, people converting on the checkout flow, people retaining, people canceling, those are like your input metrics. And then you can go deeper into the input metric and then list out the customer problems. So when you're listening to a user interview, list out all the problems that they have, list it out. And then the more user interviews that you listen to, after you list out all the customer problems, you start to see big patterns, like which customer problem keeps coming up, right? And then once you have that, then put it in your opportunity solution tree. So which input metric does that impact? And then, connect it to that. So you have like your goals, let's say revenue, you have your input metrics, you have your customer problems from those interviews, and then you can come up with experiment ideas. Okay. So yeah, that is like the simplest way to structure your thinking and use both the quantitative data and the qualitative data that you have done in your product discovery work and combine them together.
Actually, maybe we can, I love the opportunity solution tree. Maybe we can flesh it out a little bit, right? So to your example of you have all these input metrics that drive towards revenue. Let's say under checkout, you're noticing through customer interviews that the call to action is not really clear, for example, or that they don't trust the platform enough to put in their credit card information. How do you phrase those as user problems, and how do you map them back to the opportunity solution tree?
Yeah. So one is, okay, you have your goal, let's say revenue, and then let's say input metric would be the checkout conversion rate. And then you can even have more input metrics. So the offer page conversion rate, the create account conversion rate, and then the add credit card page conversion rate. And then underneath that input metric, you can have your customer problems. So let's say underneath the add credit card page, a customer problem would be like, I live in Australia and you can't accept my credit card because this is a USA website, or yeah, I don't trust your website, or do you have a firm? I would prefer to use a firm than a credit card. So those are all customer problems, right? And so I just listed 3 just out of my mind, like there can be like so many customer problems that you can hear from user interviews. And then the hardest part is prioritization, right? And then which of those customer problems, so I listed out 3, which of those 3 customer problems is like the most important, right? And then that's the one that you should tackle first and build a solution for or run experiments on.
Love it. So once you've identified your top customer problem, there's thousands of solutions that you can implement. How do you advise people to narrow down on, the top solutions to test for?
My gosh, JJ, this is what makes our job so difficult, but also so fun. Yeah, solutions. My best advice. So brainstorms are really good. They really are good. And here's one piece of advice is that when it comes to brainstorms, you'll have a lot of ideas. The best ones you have pretty good intuition for. Rely on your intuition. If it sounds good, it probably is good. Just focus on that. And then start to like flesh it out. Yeah, like you'll always have a bunch of ideas, but the good ones are actually like pretty clear. It's more of the execution, right? It's like, how do you actually execute on that idea? Like, what does the design look like? How is it built by engineering? Where's the copy? That I think is the hardest part. Ideation, for me anyway, it may be different for others. For me, that hasn't been hard. It's more of the execution of the idea that has been hard.
I think we need both. We need the execution, and the harder part, I think, often is the discovery part. To your point about how a lot of times people either don't know how to do discovery or they don't feel comfortable, right? It is intimidating talking to a stranger and potentially get rejected, potentially feeling awkward, right? So I think it's very important to have both the execution piece and also the discovery piece. And I love the examples that you gave today, Maria. They were very enlightening and hopefully can illustrate to listeners the importance of talking to users and really understanding where they're coming from, the potential blind spots that we might have as product development people. With that, Maria, how can people find you and how can people give back to you? You've given listeners a lot of advice and really great gems today. How can they find you and how can they give back to you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can even email me directly if you would like to. So my email address is mcuasay21@gmail.com. I think I even have that email up on my LinkedIn account. Like, please feel free to contact me. I love hearing from other people. I talk to a bunch of other product managers and growth marketing managers all the time. Sometimes I see, let's say, like a really good ad on Instagram. I try to find out who the person who created that and like chat with them. I just love hearing from other people and like hearing insights and like learning. So please feel free to reach out to me.
Amazing. With that, Maria, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode of the Product Discovery Show, please subscribe and share with anyone who has had trouble getting product market fit. You'll save them from the sleepless nights and nerve-wracking product reviews. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.